Mannix was an American television detective series that ran from 1967 to 1975 on CBS. It was created by Richard Levinson and William Link, and it was developed by executive producer Bruce Geller. The title character was Joe Mannix, and he was a private investigator. He was played by Mike Connors. During the first season, Joe Mannix works for a large Los Angeles detective agency called Intertech, which was actually the planned original title of the show. Now, the firm Intertech uses computers to help solve crimes. Into the second season, Mannix actually goes to work on his own with the assistance of his loyal secretary, Peggy. She's played by Gail Fisher. Now, Joe Mannix is a private eye in the classical traditional sense. The show Mannix was a template for the no-frills detective dramas that fill the airways of the 1970s. Mannix was actually more of a show of the 70s than the 60s, even though it debuted in 1967. There was Cannon, who was an overweight private eye. There was Barnaby Jones, who was really old. And then there was Longstreet, who was blind. Yes, a blind one. But Mannix was the original model. Mannix was put together with extreme skill and care, but its mainstream success made it really easy to take for granted and overlook it. It was an extremely easy show to watch, period. It was the very low-key personality of Mike Connors, the former basketball player and B-movie actor who played the title character, and he set the tone for the show. Connors was one of those tough guys that didn't have to show off. He was one of those really nice guys. The guy that was perfectly willing to take a lost little girl as a client and then negotiate the fee out of her lunch money and never collect it, of course. He had a rare sincerity about him that kept scenes like that from getting really corny. He lived in a nice little comfortable Spanish-style home, and he worked out of the office there. He dressed in plaid sport coats made out of fabric that were super thick as carpet. He drove a muscle car that was painted a hideous shade of army green. Joe Mannix was one of these functional guys, but he was really square too. When you watched the show, he could be your uncle or your brother-in-law. He was that quiet, comforting fella that always had your back and you knew would take care of you if enemies advanced upon you. Now, Mannix's secretary, Peggy, was added to actually underscore his solid character. It was played by Gail Fisher, and she was one of the more prominent African-American actors in television at that time. She was the widow of a cop, and she was also a single mother, which meant that the producers could show Mannix in a kind of surrogate dad mode whenever little Toby turned up on screen. Now, Mannix was an action-packed program. Joe Mannix got binged on the back of the head or shot in the shoulder in just about every episode. Now, the people that always came after him were characters of a different type. They were goons that we normally didn't see in the private eye shows. They weren't content to just use their fists. They came after him with motorcycles, dune buggies, race cars, and helicopters. The show Mannix was so easy to watch that no matter how often the critics singled it out because of its brutality, it escaped unscathed. Other TV shows of that time were being censored. They were being retooled or canceled in the wake of the 1968 problems that occurred in the country. But the show Mannix continued to become more aggressive. Mannix had one of the great songs that was done by Lalo Schifrin. He had also done the theme song for Mission Impossible, which you might call a sibling to Mannix. The Mannix music was almost a toe-tapping coffee house jazz. The song actually rattled around in your head as you watched the rest of the show. Everything about Mannix just fostered a lovely atmosphere and an agreeable mood. It was without a doubt comfort food on television. One of the exciting elements of Mannix was its imagery. It was tame in some episodes, and it came unhinged in others. You had extreme zoom, you had lens flares, extreme wide angles and long shots, extremely low shots, overhead, Dutch angles, handheld, and gyroscope-mounted cameras. It used really catchy, cutting-edge visual gimmicks to snare viewers' attentions. Mannix ran for 8 seasons and was still in the Nielsen Top 20 when it was canceled. This was basically due to an obscure falling out between Paramount, which bought Desilu, and its shows in 1967, and CBS over late-night syndication of the series, which the network feared would cut into the new episode ratings. Plans for a TV movie revival of Mannix completely collapsed when Bruce Giller died in a plane crash in 1978. Although Connors did reprise the character in a nostalgic 1997 Diagnosis Murder. The guest stars that showed up on the show is just a who's who of celebrities from Hollywood. There was Julie Adams, Ed Begley Jr., Hugh Beaumont, the father from Leave It to Beaver, Robert Conrad, Shelley Fabre, Bill Bixby, Linda Evans, and William Shatner. The list just goes on and on and on of people that you would know. Even Batman was there, Adam West. Mike Connors married his wife, Mary Lou Wiley, on September 10, 1949, when they were both students at UCLA. They had 2 children, a son and a daughter. Mike Connors' final appearance on television was in 2007 in the comedy 2.5 Men. He played the love interest of Evelyn Harper. In January of 2017, Mike Connors died in Tarzana, California. He was 91 years old. What a great show this was. Thank you so much, Mike Connors, for your exceptional job and portrayal of Joe Mannix. You blazed the trail for many other detective shows. Rest in peace. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll keep chasing the classics.